Shadeed.
And then the food, and then
Okay.
Imam Riyadh.
So you want for you from what time? 6:15 to 6:45.
Yeah, that's good.
Perfect. That's good. And then Imam, and then the food at 6:45.
Mm-hmm. Everything can be done by Maghrib.
Okay, 6:45 to 6:30.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Let me begin. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Alhamdulillah, our Friday night lecture, inshallah, will be reading from my book, He Came to Perfect Moral Character. As you can see, we changed the cover of the book. The cover of the book has been changed. I think it has been changed for the better. All right, this is now the new cover of the book. We printed some more and we changed the color of the book. We came to perfect moral character, the persona of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, through my eyes. So if there's anyone out there who has purchased the book, we will be reading tonight from chapter 9. So if you have the book with you, then you can read along with the book. You can read along. We're starting on page 163. Page 163, the chapter of the title, chapter 9, Everyone Wants to Feel Important. Everyone wants to feel important. As it is with most of the chapters in the book, I led with a quote that alludes to the information that's in the chapter. The quote says, "Don't forget, a person's greatest emotional need is to feel appreciated." A person's greatest emotional need is to feel appreciated. And I begin by saying, Alhamdulillah, hamdan kathiran tayyiban mubarakan fi kama yuhibbu rabbuna wa yarda, wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama tasliman kathira. I begin the chapter by saying that the religion of Islam is one that requires of its adherents to have deep interpersonal connections in order to create a cohesive environment that permeates with love and mutual respect. Right? The religion of Islam, it requires of those who claim to be followers of Islam, it requires of them to have deep interpersonal connections. Deep interpersonal connections in order to create a cohesive environment that permeates with love and mutual respect. When you look at the environment where the Prophet ﷺ raised or nurtured the Sahaba, that was an environment that permeated with love and mutual respect. Amongst the Sahaba, there was love and mutual respect. And that was because their relationships with their interpersonal connections, their interpersonal relationships with one another wasn't just surface. It wasn't just on the surface. There were deeper connections between them. Deeper connections. We're talking about a man like Sa'd ibn Rabi', who told Abdurrahman ibn Auf that I am the richest man in Medina. He didn't even know him. He had no prior relationship between them, other than the fact that the Prophet ﷺ made a special pact of brotherhood between them. And he said to him, he said, I am the wealthiest man in Medina. He said, وَإِنِّي أُنَاسِفُكَ نِصْفَ مَالِي, and I offer you half of my money. I offer you half of my money. Here's a complete stranger. Relationship is solely based upon, right? Solely based upon their relationship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, Inni unasifuka nisfa mali. I offer you half of my wealth. He said, I also have multiple wives. He said, I take a look at each one of my wives. Choose which one you want. I will divorce her Wait till she finishes her iddah period, and then you can marry her. Choose any one of them that you want. I mean, subhanAllah. I mean, these were deep connections between one another. All right? So the religion of Islam requires of its adherents to have deep interpersonal connections in order to create a cohesive environment that permeates with love and mutual respect. Thus, we are instructed in Islam that if we love someone, we should inform them. All right, this helps to create strong relationships. That in Islam, if you love someone, and we're not even talking about spousal relationships. We're talking about relationships outside of the construct of marriage. I'm talking about friendships, interpersonal relationships, connections, right? That we are required Islamically that if we love someone, that we should tell the person that we love them. You are obligated as a Muslim that if you love someone to tell them that you love them. This helps to make the person feel valued and will encourage him to reciprocate the same to others. When you make a person feel valued, they in turn will make other people feel valued. But when you have a society of individuals that are hurting other people, perpetuating hurt from one person to the next, this is the type of environment that you have. You have an environment that is drowning in pain. And this is unfortunately what we are experiencing as an American Islamic community, more in particular African American Muslims. We are a society of Muslims, right, who are drowning in pain. Drowning in pain. And what we do is we perpetuate a cycle of pain by hurt people hurting other people, by becoming hurt people who in turn impose or superimpose their hurt on other people. Islam came to change that by telling us that if you have a love for someone, then you are obligated to tell that person that you love them, right? So this helps the person to feel valued and will encourage them to reciprocate the same to others. When a person feels like they're valued, when a person feels like they're loved, then they go and they spread that love to other people. You understand? Hurt people hurt people. People who are loved love other people. When you are shown love, then it's very easy for you to show love. You follow me? When somebody loves you, look at a man or a woman that's in a marriage and they are extremely happy with their spouse. Look at, they show up to work on time. They have a good attitude, right? They're very gentle and merciful and compassionate with their children, right? Because when you are shown love, right? When you are shown love, it's easy for you to love other people. But when you are dealt with in a very horrible manner, hurt people, then you're going to hurt other people. That's usually the way that it works. And we have to think about, what type of environments we're creating in our homes. What type of environments are we creating in our homes? Are we creating in our homes are our homes environments of pain, or are our homes environments of love and pleasure? Because that's going to ultimately determine the type of children that come out of those homes. If our home permeates with love, respect, compassion, mercy, then look at the type of home that children that come out of those homes, look at the type of children they become in the world. They're very compassionate to the world. They're very easygoing with the world around them, how they interact with the world around them. But when you take a person who has experienced so much trauma and pain, right, and disappointment and frustration and hurt, what type of people, how do they interact with the world around them? The same exact way that they were, that they were different, that they were interacted with. All right, so thus we are instructed in Islam that if we love someone, we should tell them. This helps to make the person feel valued, and in turn will help the person to reciprocate that love and that value, that being valued, that feeling of being valued. They will continue to reciprocate that to other people. There was a man in the presence of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam when another man walked by. The one with the Prophet ﷺ said, "O Messenger of Allah, indeed I love that man." The man is standing with the Prophet. A guy walks by, and the guy turns to the Prophet ﷺ and says, "I love him. Inni la uhibbu fulanan." I love him. And the Prophet ﷺ said to the man, "Hal akhbartahu bidharik?" Did you tell him that you love him? The man said, "No." The Prophet ﷺ said, "Idhab fa akhbirhu annaka tuhibbu." Go and tell him that you love him. Go and tell him that to be expressive with your feelings. All right, we some of us, we live in a society where people are very guarded with their feelings, very guarded. You have husband and wife, man, that live in relationships, man, where they don't even tell each other how they feel about each other. We're talking about within the construct of marriage, right? We're talking about within the institution of marriage that is supposed to be one that is cushioned with love and compassion. And you have men and women that are in those relationships that never tell each other how they feel. Intimate feelings, how much they love each other and how much they respect one another and how much they value one another. And if that is the case within the institution of marriage, then you can only imagine how they are as parents with their children, right? So this hadith teaches us that we should be expressive with our emotions, with our feelings, outside of the institution of marriage. This didn't happen between two people who were married. This is a man who saw another man and told the Prophet, "I love that brother." And the Prophet said, "Well, did you tell him?" He said, "No." He said, "Well, then go tell him. Go tell him." This didn't have anything to do between a husband and a wife. This was between two brothers. So if that is the case, that the Prophet ﷺ told the man to go tell that brother you love him, how much more would that be emphasized within the institution of marriage between a husband and a wife? Far more. All right? And this hadith was collected in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad. One of the most virtuous acts that a Muslim can perform is to bring happiness to the heart of his brother or his sister in Islam. The Prophet ﷺ was asked about the most beloved deeds to Allah. Ahabbu a'mali ilallah. The most beloved deeds to Allah. And the Prophet ﷺ said, Idkhal as-surur ala akhik. To place happiness in the heart of your brother. To say something, to do something to make the person feel good about themselves. Right? To say something or to do something for someone that makes them feel good about themselves. Let me ask you before I go any further, why? Why is that so important in Islam? To make someone feel good about themselves. Why is that important? Why do you guys think that's important? So much so that the Prophet said that this is one of the most beloved deeds to Allah. To make how you make somebody feel. Making somebody feel good about themselves. Why is that important?
One thing, it creates harmony in the brotherhood.
It creates harmony. It creates brotherhood. Okay? What else does that do? When you make someone feel good about themselves, what does that do for that person? It lifts them up to do what?
Good deeds. Reciprocate.
To reciprocate. There you go. We are now creating a cycle. A cycle now. Right? It's not about, because we're very stingy. We don't like to say good things to people because we're miserable and we want everybody else to be miserable. As a matter of fact, we live in such a sick society that when we see somebody happy, we get upset because we start to feel entitled that you don't have a right to feel happy. Who are you to feel happy? I'm miserable, so that means that everybody around me has to be miserable. So you, as a person living in this type of environment, we have to always be guarded. Like when we find our little space of happiness, we have to protect it, right? We have to become overprotective of our small spaces of happiness because almost everybody around us is miserable. Not only are the people that are around us miserable, but they get envious and jealous when they see you happy. Almost if they have this entitlement, like you are not allowed to be happy. It's like, it's like people sitting back scratching their head like, what he smiling about? What is he happy for? Why are you happy? Why are you so happy? And it's just like, why do I need a reason to be happy? right? I need a reason to be happy. I'm alive. I'm breathing. I can see. You understand? I got another chance. I got another day to make it right between me and God. Like, why? I can think of a million reasons why I should be happy. But to someone else, it's almost like you don't have a right to be happy. And they scoff at you and they ice grill you from such a distance. And the only thing that you did wrong was you were happy. I did nothing to you. You saw me, right? And you look at me, and because you are miserable, you automatically feel like I don't have a right. This is this entitlement that we have, man. Sad, man. Sad. So one of the most virtuous acts that you can do in Islam is to, place happiness into the heart of somebody else. Idkhal as-surur ala akhik. To place happiness into the heart of somebody else. Because when you make the person around you happy, they're going to in turn be uplifted. They're going to feel valued. And then they're going to become better worshipers of Allah. They're going to become better husbands to their wives. They're going to become better fathers to their children. And they're going to become a better citizen in the society that we live in. Simply because you took the time out to make the person feel good about themselves. So it's not necessarily that it's a good deed because you made the person feel happy or you uplifted the person. It's a good deed because of the harvest. What happens as a result of you making the person feel like that? Right? But we, in this society, we're so guarded, man. We have to be guarded because any little corner, any little piece of happiness that you carve out of, your life and everything that's going on in your life, and you carve this little corner for yourself out to find a little bit of happiness and peace, you got other people looking at you like, you're not supposed to be happy. Who are you to be happy? Right? And then on top of that, get mad at you because you're happy. And it's not that you're happy. It's just you just so happen to catch me at a happy time in my life. I'm not like overall overjoyed about my life. My life is a wreck. You understand? My life is a mess. But in order for me to function as my own defense mechanism, I got to create, I got to find some happiness in my life. I got to sift through, it's like a bag of, mixed socks. Everybody got that huge laundry bag of socks that are just mixed up socks from 3, 4, 5 years ago. You can't find a match, right? What we do in my house is when one of my kids get in trouble, we say, go empty the whole sock bag out and match all of them up. It becomes a punishment. That's how many odd socks we have in a bag, right? Your life is, kind of reminiscent of that. You looking at your life, you got all these, unfinished things, unfinished conversations, unfinished feelings, unfinished, unmanaged this, unmanaged that. And you got to sift through all of that just to find you a little space of happiness. And then when you find it, you got other people looking at you like, who are you to be happy? You're not supposed to be happy. It's a sick world that we live in, man. So, one of the most virtuous acts that we can perform as a Muslim is to bring happiness to the heart of your brother or your sister in Islam. Not only does this bring happiness to their lives, but it also makes the person feel that they are important. This is especially true within the construct of marriage between husband and wife, as well as the familial relationships between parents and children. Perhaps if parents use this method more often, children would not spend so much of their time hustling for validation from their non-Muslim friends and associates, right? We spend a lot of time, this phrase, my wife coined, hustling for validation. What does that mean, hustling for validation? I want to see if someone can kind of interpret that. Some modern vernacular, right? Hustling for validation. What does that mean, to hustle for validation? That means that you don't sit around and wait for somebody to validate you, right? Like genuinely, right? Genuinely, right? You get into arguments with people, you get into fights with people, you get into confrontations with people, you always everything about you is angling to make yourself feel like you're valid. Always arguing a mute point, right? You got those type of people that, you're always into something because behind you being into something is this search, this pursuit, this incessant pursuit of validation. Always. Always. All right? And many of our children, because we don't give them the attention that they deserve at home, we find them constantly hustling for validation from their non-Muslim friends and associates. We're living in a time where Muslims, under much scrutiny and speculation that making our children feel important should be the highest priority on our list. Right? Overexpressive for attention. Very good. Very good. We're living in a time right now where our children, who are Muslim children, making them feel important should be the top of our priorities. That our children should never feel like they are of no value, right? Our children should always feel that when they go home to mom or they go home to dad, they go home, right? They're valid, they're seen. And they can get that without even asking for it. You don't have to hustle me, to make you feel valid. I'm going to give you that on GP. Similarly, as it relates to how spouses intimately relate to one another within the institution of marriage. Many marriages dissolve. I need you guys, you married couples, or for those of you who are not Muslim, those of you who are not married, this applies to any relationship. You can take this concept and you can apply it to any relationship. Right? Trying hard to please others, yes. Many marriages dissolve because one of the two spouses, or both of them, are uncertain about the way the other feels about them. There's no doubt that if a woman felt as though she was the most important person to her husband, it would eliminate a lot of the doubts and insecurities which make her vulnerable to the demonic whispers of shaitan, especially if she is a co-wife in a polygynous marriage. I'll say that again. There's no doubt that if a woman felt as though she was the most important person to her husband, it would eliminate a lot of her doubts and insecurities. Women have doubts about themselves, about their own self-worth, about their own value, simply because the man has not validated her within the institution of marriage, has not made her feel that she is a priority in his life. She always comes second. I gotta work. I gotta take this person here. I gotta do that person there. You Johnny on the spot for everybody else. But when it comes to your wife, she's always put on the back burner, always got something else to do. Can't you do it? Can you just do that? And the person starts to feel like there is no value. I serve no greater purpose in your relationship or in my relationship with you other than what you can get from me. Right? This makes the woman vulnerable. Not just a woman, but a man as well, because men go through this as well. Men need to know where they stand. Women need to know where they stand in their relationships. If you love me, then say it. If you love me, then show it. If I mean that much to you, then show me. Show me that I am a priority in your life. Right? It helps to eliminate a lot of the doubts, right? The insecurities, which make the person vulnerable to demonic whispers of shaitan. And this is more important if the woman is in a polygynous marriage. If anything that a woman experiences in monogamy, multiply it times 100, that's what happens in polygyny. An example of this can be found in the example of Umar bin al-Khattab, who used to bring Abdullah bin Abbas to some of the gatherings that were mostly attended by the elders in the community. Abdullah bin Abbas, who was a young kid, all right, here's the Prophet ﷺ's cousin. He was actually 18 years old when the Prophet ﷺ died. All right. Abdullah bin Abbas was a young kid. Young kids growing up in an environment where the elders control everything, sometimes it's very easy for them to feel like they are of no value, right? Growing up, I didn't even know I had an opinion until I became an adult, right? It's like you don't have an opinion. It's like what I say goes. Do this, but I don't want to do that. Do what I tell you to do. Wear this, but I don't want to wear that. Well, that's what I said. You're going to wear it. We didn't even know that we had an opinion until we became an adult. When elders were around, you shut your mouth. You didn't interrupt grown folks' conversation. You didn't have anything to do with grown folks, grown people. That was the type of environment that I grew up in. All right? Growing up in those type of environments, it's easy to feel as a kid that you don't matter, that you are nothing. So then you do things, like I used to do, like get in trouble on purpose, because I know when I get home, I'm going to be the center of attention, right? And you have some children who get in trouble purposely because they are looking for the attention. That's the only way that's what I mean when I say hustling for validation, right? You'll do whatever it takes to be noticed. And that's a very dangerous place to be. So Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, he used to bring Abdullah ibn Abbas to some of the gatherings that were attended by the elders in the community. And Umar did this purposely because he wanted to show the elders how much knowledge Abdullah ibn Abbas had, how much knowledge he managed to acquire at such a young age, and to validate his sense of self-worth. You validate a kid at such a young age, they grow up having confidence within themselves. This is more importantly with boys, right? What happens with us, especially growing up in the inner cities, we don't get that validation from our fathers because the fathers are usually not around. So we end up have to go in the street, knock a person out, beat a person up, and then we get this false sense of validation. People are afraid of us. People know our worth because, they know we can fight. Or the people know that, this person is handsome and he get girls. This person, he get money. He hustles, so he gets money. So we find all of these other superficial ways to get validation. This person can fight. This person is cute. He gets girls. This person, he's really successful in the drug game. He gets money. So we find all of these different ways, which are really superficial ways, to get validation, but get people to say he is that guy. In that realm right there, that's the man, that's that guy. And that's a false sense of validation because it is predicated on something superficial. It's predicated on something that is superficial. But however, Abdullah bin Abbas, radiallahu anhuma, Umar was taking him to the gatherings of some of the elders of the Sahaba to show them how much knowledge he managed to acquire at such a young age and to validate his sense of self-worth, to let him know that this guy is valuable in our community. We need more people like him, right? I'll give you an example. So on one occasion, Abdullah bin Abbas was in a gathering with the elders of the Sahaba. And Abdurrahman ibn Auf, one of the foremost to embrace Islam, he said to Umar, Lana awlad mithlahu. We have children his age. Umar, why are you bringing, right? Why are you bringing him to the gathering with the elders? We have children his age. This is Abdurrahman chastising Umar for bringing Abdullah bin Abbas into the gathering. He said, why are you bringing him here? We have children his age. So Umar, radiallahu anhu, he asked them, he wanted to show them why. He asked them a question, an attempt to justify Abdullah bin Abbas's presence amongst those of his father's caliber. These were men that were his father's age. And Umar wanted to justify his presence amongst them. So Umar says, does anybody know the tafsir of the verse or the surah An-Nasr? إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحِ وَرَأَيْتَ النَّاسَ يَدْخُلُونَ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ أَفْوَاجًا فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ إِنَّهُ كَانَ تَوَّابًا. Does anybody know what these ayats mean? And so some of the Sahaba started to say this means that, Islam is going to spread. people are going to enter into Islam in droves. Some of the Sahaba said that it meant that they should praise Allah and seek His forgiveness when they are given victory. Some of them said they didn't know. Others simply said nothing. So Umar turned to Abdullah bin Abbas, the youngest guy in the room, and he says to him, who had yet to reach the age of puberty, he says, "Is this what you say about these verses?" And Abdullah bin Abbas, he replied, "No." Then Umar said, "What do you say about this surah?" And he replied that it is an indication of the imminent demise of the Prophet ﷺ. He said that this surah was revealed to show us that the Prophet ﷺ is about to die. Subhanallah. This surah, Surah An-Nasr, was revealed to tell us that the Prophet ﷺ is about to die. And Umar said in response to this, "The only interpretation of this surah that I know is what this young boy just said." That's what I know about the surah. So imagine how Ibn Abbas felt. Imagine how this young guy felt, where, right, Umar validated him. This is genuine validation. He didn't have to hustle for that, because they lived in a society where the elders understood that, as the scholars say, that children are half of our present, but they're all of our future. And they knew that. See, what we do in this society is children got to kind of stay in this little bubble until they become adults, and then boom, out of nowhere, when they become adults, then we'll give them the platform. But until then, there's no preparation. We're not preparing children to become the next imams or the next leaders or whatever the case may be. The average imam doesn't have any young people under his tutelage. He doesn't have young people that he's nurturing to become the next imams. We're too busy as imams hustling for validation, believe it or not. We're too busy as imams hustling for validation ourselves, to be worried about validating somebody else. And that's a problem within itself. So imagine how Ibn Abbas felt, just sitting in the presence of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, some of whom were known to be promised paradise. Here, Abdullah bin Abbas is just hearing narrations. This person was promised Jannah. This person was promised paradise. And here he is sitting in a gathering with these elders, right? Some of whom were known to be promised paradise. The reputations of many of them were well known throughout the city from participating in battles alongside the Prophet ﷺ, many of which he was too young to even remember, let alone partake in. And yet, he's sitting in the presence of these people. Great people. Great people. I remember one time we had Imam Siraj was at Philadelphia Masjid. We were having a gathering of imams there. And I was speaking to Imam Siraj, and my son was standing next to me. Now, he didn't know who Imam Siraj was. But after we walked away, my son looked at me and he was like, "Who was that?" Like, he saw how fond I was of him, and he asked me, "Who was that?" I said, "You don't know who that was?" I said, "That is Imam Siraj. That is the Imam, right, here in America, amongst African Americans. That is our Imam. Despite nobody's overlooking mistakes or whatever the case may be, nobody's overlooking that. But mistakes come with the territory of being a leader. And you can criticize all day long, but part of the problem for us as African-American Muslims is that we don't recognize anybody as has a position of leadership over us. You ask the average African-American Muslim, Sunni Muslim, who is their imam, they don't have an imam. And we take pride in that. We take pride in, not having an imam, as if that gives you some type of, status or position. Like, there's nothing praiseworthy about that. You don't have anybody that preceded you, that came before you, that you look up to, not even a little bit. You don't have nobody you look up to from amongst your people, from amongst your community. Oh, I only take from the scholars. I only look up to the scholars. Well, guess what? They make mistakes too. You just don't know about them. But it's so easy for us to hate our own. It's so easy for us to subtract and deduct from our own. But then when it comes to someone from another race, someone from another culture, we extol them sometimes beyond what is necessary. Here again, that validation, man. And it's sad, man. It really is. It really is a sad situation. nonetheless, when my son heard me speaking about Imam Siraj, he then understood Imam Siraj's place in our narrative. Before then, he didn't know who he was. But when he started to see, when he asked me who he was, and I began to become enthusiastic in explaining to him who he was and all of the things that he has done for Muslims in America, not Muslims as a whole, not just African American Muslims, then he starts to say, wow, I never knew. Now he knows. Right? Now he knows. And it's our responsibility to make sure that our children grow up having respect for leadership in Islam in this country. And not to just, grow up thinking that, the only leaders that we have are scholars of whom you don't even know what they look like. If Sheikh Mukbil, rahmatullahi alayhi, was in front of you, you wouldn't even know who he was. But yet you yelling every time you turn around talking about, I only take from the scholars and Sheikh Mukbil, Sheikh bin Baz. And if those scholars were alive, may Allah have mercy upon them and give them their, spacious graves. If those scholars were alive and were standing in front of you, you wouldn't even know who they were. You wouldn't even know who they were. There's a story about Sheikh Uthaymeen rahimahullah ta'ala that I translated. I translated his whole biography. But there was a story that was mentioned about Sheikh Uthaymeen rahimahullah ta'ala that he was leaving a particular place, going home, traveling. And on his way leaving, he saw a guy on the side of the road, and the guy, was looking for a ride. So Sheikh Uthaymeen told his driver to pull over and pick the guy up. And he smelled cigarettes on the guy, and he told the guy, you can get in, but, with the condition. And the man said, well, what's the condition? Sheikh Uthaymeen said that you don't smoke. All right? So the man said, okay. He got in. He was on they were going to the same place. So Sheikh Uthaymeen turned around and asked the guy, where are you going? He said, I'm going to visit this particular sheikh in Unayza. And Sheikh Uthaymeen said, well, who are you talking about? He said, his name is Muhammad ibn Salih al-Uthaymeen. So Sheikh Uthaymeen said, okay. He said, when we get there, he usually prays at this particular masjid. He said, pray Asr there and you'll see him. Sheikh Uthaymeen never told him who he was, right? He never said, I am Sheikh Uthaymeen. He never said, they didn't need that type of validation, right? Showing you, my point is that if these great sheikhs, he said, I'm on my way to Unayza to go see Sheikh Uthaymeen. And here you are riding in the car with him, showing you that we extol the scholars and they're this and they're that. And if the person was in front of you, you wouldn't even know who they were. So they get to Unayza, Sheikh Uthaymeen drops the person off and he goes about his business. Sheikh Uthaymeen goes to the masjid for Asr, leaves the salat. The man leaves the salat. Sheikh Uthaymeen leaves the salah. After the prayer is over, the man looks up and sees Sheikh Uthaymeen leaving the salah, and he walked over to him and he said, basically started kissing him on his forehead, saying, I didn't know you were Sheikh Uthaymeen. And he said, it wasn't for you to know. I wasn't going to turn around and say, I'm the guy you're looking for. They didn't need that type of validation, right? So, Ibn Abbas, radiallahu ta'ala anhuma, he's sitting around people whose reputations, many of them were well known throughout the city for participating in battles, right? Can you think about all of the stories that got back to Medina, right? When the battle was over, the battle of Uhud, right? The battle of Khandaq, the battle of Tabuk, the battle of, Khaybar, all these different battles that took place in Islamic history. A lot of the youth of the Sahaba, they weren't even old enough to participate, but word got back to Medina about a lot of these guys, and, they looked at them in a different light. They saw Umar as he was like, a superhero in their eyes. They're hearing stories about him and, in this battle and that battle, and here he is sitting amongst these individuals. These are not... we're not talking about Instagram stars. We're not talking about, these famous people that we see on the internet. We're talking about actually famous people who are noted in history for doing something, right? Not for making foolish videos and uploading them to YouTube or to Instagram. They were warriors, scholars, and most importantly, people whose contributions to Islam paved the way for much of the privilege that Ibn Abbas enjoyed. Much of the privileges that Ibn Abbas enjoyed was predicated on these scholars, these warriors, whose contributions paved the way for him to enjoy those particular privileges. And here he was attending their gatherings and answering questions in their presence. This alone was enough to validate his sense of self-worth and boost his confidence. When most of us were growing up, there was an unspoken rule that you do not open your mouth in the presence of your elders, nor do you interrupt their conversations. There was a level of awe in the presence of adults, the like of which is very rare today. This method was also practiced by the Prophet ﷺ when he brought Umar's son, Abdullah ibn Umar, to one of the gatherings for the same purpose that Umar did with Ibn Abbas. So this wasn't an anomaly, right? This wasn't an anomaly for Umar to do this. Rather, the Prophet ﷺ did the same thing with Umar's son, Abdullah ibn Umar. All right, so this shows you that it was a common practice, right? It was a common practice amongst the elders of the Sahaba to take the young people into the gatherings, right? To take select individuals from amongst them and take them into the gatherings and let them build their sense of worth, their self-worth, and their validation. All right? The Prophet ﷺ asked one time, he had Abdullah ibn Umar with him, Umar's son, with him in a gathering of the elders. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, there's a tree that resembles the Muslim. Which tree is it? So some of the Sahaba said that it was this tree. Some said that tree. The Prophet ﷺ then said that it was the date palm tree that resembled the Muslim because he constantly puts forth his good deeds like the date palm tree that constantly puts forth its fruit. And it was the interpretation of the verse that I mentioned in the khutbah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, don't you see how Allah puts forth an example of a good word like a good tree whose roots are firm and whose branches spring up to the sky. It puts forth its fruit consistently by the permission of its Lord. And this is the believer. While they were leaving the gathering, this is the point here. The Prophet ﷺ and Abdullah ibn Umar and his father, Umar bin al-Khattab, this is a conversation between a father and a son. As they were leaving the gathering, Abdullah ibn Umar, he turned to his father and he said, I knew the answer to that question. When the Prophet asked the question, I knew the answer to the question. So Umar said to his son, well, why didn't you say something? When the Prophet asked, why didn't you say something? And Abdullah said, I was too shy to say something while I was in the presence of the elders. I was too afraid, too shy. This is the adab. Although he knew the answer. So Umar said to him, which is the validation, he said, for you to have answered that question in front of everyone would have been more beloved to me than having such and such and such and such from worldly possessions. I would have loved for nothing more than for my boy to answer the Prophet's question correctly in the presence of all of these older men. How do you think Abdullah ibn Umar felt when his father said that? That feeling of, wow, like that would have impressed my father. There was a feeling of validation there, right? So we can see from this example the respect that the youth had for their elders as well as the power of paternal influence. I'll say that again. Paternal influence, meaning the influence that a father has over his son. Fathers, if any of you are listening and you are fathers, you don't realize how much influence you have over your children, more importantly, your sons. You don't realize how much influence. There's nothing more powerful and more invigorating to the soul of a father to look at his son who is trying to be so much like him. A son that tries so hard to be like his father. And although you want them to have their own personality, you want them to be better than you, but at the same token, as a father, when you see that, There's nothing that is more powerful than that, man. That you have made such an impact on your child that the child aspires to be like you. Whether in the capacity of dressing, whether in the capacity of how you carry yourself, whether in the capacity of how you articulate yourself. SubhanAllah, I remember when my children were a little younger, they might hate me after I mention this example, but the three oldest, I remember, along with some of my younger children, they took their tablet and set it up in the living room, and they were actually giving khutbahs in front of the camera, recording it. My wife, kind of, made me aware of it. She said, they're in the living room giving khutbahs in front of the camera, like, imitating you. And you know what I mean? Like it's just so powerful, man, that influence. Because you bring your children to Jumu'ah, you bring your children, for lectures and things like that. And you're never really expecting that you are influencing them, because most of the time when you bring them to Jumu'ah, they fall asleep against the wall. They're not paying attention. You get in the car after Jumu'ah, you ask them, what was the khutbah about? I don't remember. So you're not thinking as a parent that you're actually having that level of impact on your children until they go and do something in front of their mom. And mom comes back and tells you, like, what your son did today? And you're like, wow, I never even knew that I had that level of influence on my kids, And it's very, very, it's very humbling, man, very humbling, because I think the most humiliating thing is for your child to grow up and not want to be anything like you. You know what I mean? You don't see any resemblance of yourself in your children because they work so hard trying to be nothing like you. There's nothing that is more damaging to the spirit of a parent than to have your children wanting to be the total opposite of you. Not because they want to create their own identity, but because there's something in you that they see as a deficiency that for them, they don't feel that it's going to work for them. All right, so we can see from this example the respect that the youth had for their elders, as well as the power of paternal influence. When Umar told his son that he would have been more delighted for him to answer the Prophet's question than he would have been had he achieved some worldly gain, this sentiment alone would influence Abdullah ibn Umar to be more audacious if another opportunity presented itself later on. So if Abdullah ibn Umar had another opportunity presented itself to him later on, he would seize the moment because of what his father just said to him. His father said, for you to have answered the Prophet's question in front of everybody, my boy, my son, for you to have answered that question would have been more beloved to me than having anything from this world. Abdullah ibn Umar, hearing that, obviously is impacted now. He's empowered now because he feels, okay, my father likes that. Okay, the next time an opportunity like that presents itself, I'm going to respond. I'm going to answer. In the absence of paternal influence, many of our young boys are swayed by a false sense of belonging to this group or that gang due to the incessant need to feel important. I'll say that again, because there are some of us that are adults now, and we still have this incessant need to feel important, and therefore we join Muslim gangs. This group, this clique, this sect, this group over here. I'm going to call myself this, and I'm going to be a part of this masjid. I'm going to call myself this, and I'm going to be a part of this group. This feeling, this incessant need to be important and to feel valid. For years, I couldn't figure for the life of me why grown men would be a part of this community, this masjid, that masjid, and follow behind this imam, follow behind that imam. And now I realize that is this need to feel valid, to feel like they matter, to feel like they are worth something. And it doesn't matter how insane it seems to other people. To them, they are finally getting the validation that they feel they need or that they deserve. That's a sad thing, man. So in the absence of paternal influence, many of our young boys are swayed by a false sense of belonging to this group or that gang due to the incessant need to feel important. There's a false sense of belonging because the only reason why you feel that you belong is because you haven't violated any of the code of ethics that belong to that group or to that. The moment you violate and those people turn on you, you don't even feel like you belong anymore. So it's a false sense of belonging. Because when people love you and you belong to a family, you belong to, people who say that they love you, obviously you can't just do whatever you want to do, but at the same token, they don't just, wash their hands of you because you made a mistake. That's a false sense of belonging. They may rebel against any authority and begin having inappropriate conduct in school because the only time their parents seem to pay attention to them is when they get in trouble. And some of us need to look at our children. Right now, some of our children are on punishment right now for bad behavior, misbehavior in school or otherwise. And the fact of the matter is that you as the parent are the culprit. It's your fault. So the child gets punished twice. And in Islam, we are not allowed to kill anything twice. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Inna Allah kataba al-ihsan ala kulli shay." Allah has prescribed perfection in everything. So when you slaughter your animal, you sharpen your blade and you cut the umbilical cord, you cut the jugular vein or the main vein so that the animal doesn't die twice. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, "La yadhukuna fiha illa al-mawtata al-ula." That you will only experience death one time in this life. You will not die twice. This is from the rahmah, the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because death has agony attached to it. The Prophet ﷺ, even in his own death, his own demise, he said, "Inna lil maut la sakarat," that death has its agony. It's painful process separating the soul from the body. It's a very painful process, even for those who believe. So therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to torture us by having us have that experience more than one time. However, our children, they get punished twice. They get punished once for not being made to feel that they matter, not to being made to feel valid. And then they go to school, get in trouble because they're not getting the validation at home that they need. And then when they get in trouble, they get home and they get punished. So essentially, we are punishing children for not showing the children the attention that they need. So they get in trouble looking for attention, but we punish them for the infraction, and still they never get the attention that they need. You see how that works? As a kid, subhanAllah, as a kid, I suffered as a result of this for many years of my life. Number one, you're not getting the attention that you feel that you need at home. You go to school, you do something wrong, knowing that you're going to get in trouble for it, but at least when you get in trouble, the parent sees you. At least you're being seen by the parent. At least the parent still knows that you exist, right? It's a sad thing, man. So they may rebel against authority and begin having inappropriate conduct in school because the only time their parents seem to pay attention to them is when they get in trouble. For many years, I use a personal reference here. I said for many years in my home, the only time I seemed to get attention is when I was in trouble. I became the talk of the dinner table, the center of the conversation at grandma's house. And in order for me to get back in school, my mother had to bring me in for a conference with the principal. The only time we had a conversation was her yelling at me in the car on our way to school for the parent-teacher conference. At least I got that much of a conversation, right? And the thing is, let me say something to you young parents right now. Those of you who are very young, and you're thinking about having these huge families, right? I don't want to tell you how to live your life. But what I do want to share with you is something that will save your children from becoming, a mess emotionally, psychologically. Don't have a whole bunch of children at one time. Space your children out. Because when you have a whole bunch of children back to back, you have many women who have children back to back. They have, what they call Irish twins. Irish triplets. Meaning the children are only like a year apart. Meaning you had the child, you went through your postpartum bleeding phase, and then you got pregnant immediately. You got pregnant almost immediately after that. And so while there's another child that's an infant, you're pregnant with the very next child. The danger in that, we see this a lot in the Islamic community, the danger in having multiple children within a short window of time is that as they get older, number one, you burn yourself out because you're frustrated because you have all of these children. And children are children. They're going to do what children do. Number two is that you don't spend enough time with each and every child to give them the nurturing, the parental nurturing that they need to become full, complete children. Because you're too busy focused on the youngest one, so you neglect the oldest one. Right? You got the youngest 2 or 3, and you invest all of yourself in them because they're the youngest, and the older ones are kind of just left to, figure it out on their own. Latchkey kids, they come and they go as they please. They wear the key around their neck, tuck it in their shirt, right? One of those children who basically, by the age of 10, 11 years old, they're kind of like adults. They function like adults. They got to figure it all out. And it's unfair. It's unfair because we just go into relationships, we just having baby after baby after baby, and we don't think about how this is going to affect those children later on, man. All right, so this made me feel somewhat important in the moment, but I was receiving negative attention for all the wrong reasons. The same thing happens when our children break the law and end up in jail. When they come home, they are the center of attraction in the neighborhood and amongst their circle of friends. And sometimes this can be addictive. You have some people who go back and forth to jail. They spend their entire lives skid bidding. 2 years here, 6 months here, a year here, because they became addicted to the attention that they get when they come home. The day they come home is a huge party, right? They did a movie years ago. There was a movie years ago. I believe the name of the movie was South Central. About a guy, I'm forgetting the name of the actor, African American guy. He's, had, the braids going back, and he was, pretty much that guy, Crip. He went to jail, and then he comes home, and there's a huge party for him. He's a little older now, and then he goes back to jail, and he goes to jail for a long period of time, and then by the time he gets home, everybody that he used to know is either dead or in jail. The mother of his kid, right? Mother of the kid is on drugs. And she says to him when he came home, the same thing she said to him the first time he went to jail and came home. He went to jail, came home, short a bit. He came home, there was a party, and she was, beautiful. And she said, why didn't you tell me you was coming home? I would have did my hair. I would have got myself together, right? He goes to jail for like 20 years, the second time, comes home, and she's all addicted to drugs. And she says, why didn't you tell me you were coming home? I would have done my hair or something. It's the same narrative over and over again because the person becomes addicted to, as you said, the cheers. Everybody's cheering for you when you come home. But then you go to jail and you come home and all of the people who used to cheer for you on your way home are no longer around. There's nobody to cheer for you. So going to jail becomes corny. Going to jail is not even worth it anymore because there's nobody there to celebrate your coming home. And believe it or not, that, can become very boring. And that could drive a person to stop going to jail altogether because they feel like coming home is not a party anymore because all of the people who used to celebrate my release are now incarcerated themselves on drugs. They can barely afford anything. And then the only thing that you get when you come home is a 40 bottle. Here you go, I'll treat you to a bottle of whiskey or a bottle of wine or some Hennessy. I'll treat you to some cheap wine, $2.50, and that's the best that I can offer you coming home. Real talk, man. Real talk. So, and the thing is that what prompted this desire for attention is the lack of attention in the home. Is the lack of the attention in the home. All right? So the danger in this is that the child spends the rest of his or her life transitioning from one prison to home, from home to prison, and with each transition, his reputation seems to increase, and so does his sense of self-worth within that particular circumstance. The irony of it all is that although they receive the desired attention, albeit from the wrong people and for the wrong reasons, the drive behind it is still the incessant need to feel important. And with the creation of social media, this need has increased beyond what is humanly normal and has driven our children to extreme levels of depression and personality disorders, all due to their pursuit of higher levels of attention. Yeah. Denzel Washington said, with the creation of social media, the ego has been multiplied 700 times, 100 times. And that is this need for attention, constant attention. Look at how many times you glance at your Instagram page. We post a pic, and then we're constantly glancing at it to see how many people liked it, to see how many. And depending on how many likes you get will determine your worth. Or your worth with respect to that particular post. Yeah, man, it's a sad thing, man. Some of our children may feel worthless when they post something on social media and no one is there to like it. Nobody likes it. They may feel like a complete failure because no one liked my pic. Many friendships have broken up because a person said, I saw you like somebody else's pic, but you didn't like mine. Right? So it's like, now am I entitled, like this entitlement that you have, that because we are friends on social media, I have to like the pictures that you put up. And this is sad because you have men who do this. How do you as a man look, coming to ask me as a man, why didn't I like your pic? First of all, I don't like no man's pic. That's you in a picture, post it up with some sneakers on, and you in the picture, post it up, and you post that on Instagram. You post, man, don't look for no like from me, man. I don't like your pictures, man. Are you kidding me? This is where we are, and you a man. Like, you a man confronting another man about not liking your pic. You have got to be kidding me, man. This is what interpersonal relationships have been reduced to. Serious, man. It's a sad day, man. This is particularly dangerous. This is a particularly dangerous habit for children to develop at a young age, right? Because it could lead them to being disingenuous and superficial, or even worse, an incessant attention seeker who will do just about anything to receive it. In academic settings, especially for African American children, they may be labeled as problem children. For all of you educators out there, for those of you who are educators working in Islamic schools, working in public schools, if those of you that are teachers that are listening right now, I want you to pay attention. Because this is what happens to African American black boys in school, whether in Islamic school or whether in public school. It happens on both levels. African American children may be labeled as problem children or placed into classes with those who have mental challenges or behavior challenges, which is the beginning stages of the school to prison pipeline. This is how it starts. This is how it starts. I am a victim of that. You understand? I am a victim of that. I grew up in a foster home with a woman who was not my biological mother, with a woman who had no connection to me other than the paycheck that she was receiving at the end of the month for caring for me. That is the only connection that we had. Our umbilical cord was a check. You understand? My umbilical cord to this woman was a check from the state. That's it. We had no relation, no connection other than the check that she was receiving at the end of the month. And unfortunately, this woman, with all due respect, whatever teachers told her about me was law. She was one of those parents, like many parents, and I need parents to pay attention to this. One of those parents that whatever the school says, whatever the teacher says, whatever the principal says, that's law. That's what happened. And you as the kid, poor kid, you don't even have a voice. You can't even say, no, that's not what happened. Because to that parent, whatever the teacher said is right and you're wrong. So I was placed into the special ed classes. And special ed classes, when I was in school in the 80s, right, is a little different than special ed classes today. They try to normalize it and make everybody feel normal, but me growing up, special ed classes was a little classroom off to the side that everybody walking down the hallway could pass by, look into the classroom, and see all of the mentally challenged, retarded children, right? And there were children that were stuck into those classes simply because the more children that the school, public school, puts into those classes, the more grants they can get and the more funding. It's about money, man. It's about money. We're exploiting children for money. The foster parent hates children but loves money, right? The foster parent hates children but loves money. So takes children from the Department of Youth and Family Services, right? Takes children, brings them into her home, beats them, right? When they don't conform, when they don't act like robots, right? Don't sit down when I say sit down, go over here when I say, just be nice little robots, right? We can't be children, we have to be robots, right? Beats them relentlessly, right? And then collects a paycheck at the end of the month, right? So that's exploitation right there for money. Then those same children go to public school, right? And I'll get to the private school because private school is even worse. Go to public school, right? And are ostracized and put into a special ed class, not because they're not bright intellectually, but they have behavior problems. For obvious reasons, they have behavior problems. You take a kid that is living in a home with somebody that is not their parent, not their biological parent. Number one, the person's a stranger. Number two, the person doesn't give a damn about you. And you as a child can feel that. The person doesn't give a damn about you. All the person cares about is the check that they are receiving for you. That's it. They providing beds. Just like the prison. Prison system doesn't give a damn about your reformation, your lack of recidivism. What they care about is keeping those beds filled for the private prison industrial complex that owns them. They got to keep them filled. So it starts in the homes, these foster parents who take in these children for checks. They don't nurture them. They don't empower them. They don't make them feel confident about themselves. Ship them off into predominantly porous school systems that they can find. As a matter of fact, the grammar school that I went to, Columbia School, which was on the corner of Springdale Avenue in East Orange, is not even there anymore, right? Go figure. The school was shut down for many years, and now it's not even there no more. I don't even know what they're turning it into. Nonetheless, you go to the worst schools, and then you get the worst treatment in the schools because the school, the administrators, the teachers in the school are predominantly white, white teachers, females on top of that. They're not just white, but they're white females, right? Who label you as a black kid as a problem child in the classroom. And that labeling of being a problem child is never contested by the parent. The parent just says, oh, he's a problem in the class. Oh, he sleeps in class. You know what I mean? Like right now to this day, and any teacher that knows me knows that when you speak about my parent, speak about my kid, I'm there. I'm going to put, you are under interrogation, my interrogation, because before I pass judgment on my child, who I live with, who I know, who I cut his umbilical cord, before I let you label my kid, you have to check all my boxes. I'm sorry. You got to check all my boxes. Somebody can say, well, you're defensive of your kid. You're damn right. Because before I let you superimpose your limited judgment on my child, you got to give me the whole spiel. I'm sorry. You're not going to just tell me, oh, my kid did this or my kid did that. No. I want to know, what were you doing in the classroom? Oh, your kid doesn't pay attention. Well, perhaps you're boring as a teacher. Perhaps you're boring. Perhaps the kid just doesn't like you. Perhaps the kid can sense that you don't like him. So as a result, what you're getting is a reaction. What's your interaction with the child in the classroom? No, you don't get to say as a teacher, you don't get to stand from a place of privilege because you are an adult and label my child. You don't get to do that. And I'm just going to say, oh, okay, well, the teacher said it, so it must be right. No, la wallahi. La wallahi. No, not going to happen. You're going to work for your job. My kid is in your class. You are going to work for your job. You don't get to say your child is in danger of failing a week before the final exam, and you never sent home an email. You never sent home a paper. You never sent home a notice. You never sent home anything. And then a week before the final exam, you send me a paper saying my child is in danger of failing? No way. No way. You do not get away with that. We are going to have a meeting, me, you, and your principal. And I'm going to show your principal how inadequate you are as a teacher. And you need to question yourself. You're not going to question my kid. My child is a child who should have the freedom in the classroom not to feel threatened by a teacher because you're having marital problems at your house. And so you're going to come home and you're going to take it out on my kid? No. No, doesn't work like that. You drink, I go to your Facebook page, right? You're a teacher, you're teaching my child, but then I go to your Facebook page and I see, you're just a regular hood person. You're just a regular drinker, partier, and then you're going to come to school and label my kid as a problem child? Nah, man. And parents, you got to stop doing that. It's imperative that you guys stop, as parents, stop accepting these labels that are being placed on your children by teachers who they themselves are inadequate, are deficient. Many of whom don't even like children, don't even like black children. And so this is the beginning of the school to prison pipeline. So they're labeled as special ed, they have behavior problems, and then they create an IEP, then they create this continuum plan of action that will stick with you, this folder that goes with you from school to school to school, all the way up until you get in trouble as a juvenile, and they bring your school folder into the court. Your school folder is in the judge's courtroom. Oh, you were suspended here. You did this. It's like, how in the world are you holding me accountable in a judicial court system for something that I did in school? It's ridiculous. Sheikh said, can you hand me the charger from out of the office? Yeah, man, this stuff is crazy, man. And I blame the parents who go along with this stuff and think that it's okay. You are doing your children a disservice, man. So this is a particularly dangerous habit for children. And for African American children, they may be labeled as problem children or placed into classes with those who have mental challenges, which is the beginning stages of the school to prison pipeline. The most unfortunate thing about this situation is the only problem the child has is that he or she is not being shown enough attention for positive accomplishments, even if they are small. They don't feel like they are important to anyone unless they do something unbecoming. Thus, by making someone feel important, you gain their willingness to cooperate and to work towards your agenda. So we'll stop here, inshallah ta'ala. I just wanted to give, parents, something to take a look at, man. Like we are really doing children a disservice. We're really doing our children a disservice, and it's very important that, we give our children the attention that they deserve, right? The only problem with the child, right? They don't feel that they are important to anyone unless they do something that is unbecoming. Thus, by making someone feel important, you gain their willingness to cooperate and work towards your agenda. Work towards the agenda that you have. All right. There was an example that, last example, inshallah, I want to use to show this, to drive home this point. Let's take a look at an incident that happened during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. We're talking about making someone feel important so you can get them to do what you want them to do. That's what we're talking about. The name of the book is called He Came to Perfect Moral Character, the Persona of Prophet Muhammad Through My Eyes. You can purchase the book through PayPal online. You can go to my PayPal account, Imam Shadeed Muhammad at Gmail. You can purchase the book, leave your address, and the book will be shipped to you. The book will be shipped to you. Or we're having a fundraiser tomorrow, inshallah ta'ala. And what is the address, Sheikh? It's not in Arabic. You can translate it in Arabic. I'll give you permission to do that. All right, so let's look at an example. All right, so the fundraiser tomorrow that we're having for our masjid here, Al-Minhal Academy, the address for the fundraiser will be 315 Green Tree Road, Sewell, New Jersey, 315 Green Tree Road. And the fundraiser will start at 5 p.m. There will be food. We have our sister Kashmir Maryam who will come and do some poetry. We have Imam Riyadh who will give a lecture along with myself. Food is free. Venue is free. But the fundraiser to build a masjid or to move into another facility is not free. So if you have some time tomorrow, inshallah ta'ala, and you want to come and support this effort, please feel free to do so. Please feel free to do so. All right. So let's look at an example, and we'll end with this, of an incident that happened during the life of the Prophet ﷺ with one of the staunchest enemies of Islam during that time, Abu Sufyan ibn Harb. In order to grasp the magnitude of this point, we have to go back and take a brief look at the biography of Abu Sufyan. You got to find out who he is. All right, and what he represented to the Islamic community, and this will give you, the reader, an idea of who he was and the degree of his enmity towards Islam and the early Muslims. Ironically enough, he was the distant cousin. Abu Sufyan was the distant cousin of the Prophet ﷺ. His great-grandfather was Abdul Shams ibn Abdul Manaf, whose brother was Hisham ibn Abdul Muttalib, the great-grandfather of the Prophet ﷺ. So Abu Sufyan's grandfather and the Prophet ﷺ's great-grandfather were brothers. He was the most powerful, wealthy, and influential man in all of pre-Islamic Meccan society. He was the chief of Quraysh, and his enmity towards Islam and the Muslims continuously increased until it peaked when his own daughter, Habiba Ramla bint Abi Sufyan, embraced Islam, the same religion that he detested with a passion. That Abu Sufyan became even more upset and angry when his daughter became Muslim. Not only did she become Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ actually ended up marrying her. And Allah says in the Quran, in Surah number 21, ayah 41, and those who made mockery were surrounded by the very thing that they made mockery of. Absolutely. And those who made mockery were surrounded by the same thing, the very thing that they made mockery of. I'm not going to be able to finish this point because it's just about time for Maghrib, inshallah. So perhaps another time we'll continue reading bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. I don't know. I'll take a couple of minutes to answer any questions, if there were any questions related to our topic. I'll take a couple of minutes, inshallah ta'ala, but we stopped at page 166, inshallah ta'ala, and perhaps another time we'll read through the book. This is, he came to perfect moral character. He came to perfect moral character, the persona of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam through my eyes. Now, I don't know if there were any questions or comments that's related to the topic, inshallah. Were there any questions or comments related to the topic? Is it time for Maghrib? 36. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Sheikh Abdul Latif. Hayakallah. Much of what you said is a reflection of my own home. Yes, absolutely. Many of us are victims of that, man. Many of us, we right now still trying to remedy some of the, psychological and emotional problems and, pain that we've experienced from growing up in these homes. We're still trying to remedy some of this stuff, man. And the point, the most important thing is to ensure that our children don't, have to go through that. Absolutely. Yes, African American boys, man, we catch it the worst, man. And then our women grow up, having all of these expectations about, what a man is supposed to be. And here you are talking to this young African-American boy who went through all of these different experiences growing up. And then now to reach adulthood, and you have this woman telling you, that you're less than a man, you're not acting like a man. And it's just like, when was I ever taught how to be a man? When was I taught how to be a man? You know what I mean? Like, I just, and that's not to say that, that men, should get a pass for doing some of the stuff that we do. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not condoning, right, irresponsible behavior on the part of many African American men. But the thing is that we set the bar so high. We set the bar so high. Many of us grew up with, many of us grew up without a father. It's a wonder that we even made it into adulthood. Then we finally make it into adulthood, and you see us from afar. Oh, he's cute. I want to make him the father of my baby. And, you bring the man into your space, right? And then you have baby after baby after baby, and then you accuse him of being irresponsible. You accuse him of being less than a father. You accuse him of being this and that. When did he ever have the time? If you would have took time out to see this man for more than just being your baby daddy or your baby father or somebody that you wanted to build a life with, if you would have taken the time out to see the person as a human being, you would have been able to spot all of the immaturities, all of the insecurities, all of the things that would have made you pump your brakes on having a relationship with this person or having children with this person. You would have pumped your brakes. You understand? But you see, oh, he cute, I want to be in a relationship with him. Yeah, he's cute, but he come with a lot of stuff, man. And if you was to take the time out to find out his childhood, find out all of the ish he has been through in his life, then that would make you pump your brakes and say, well, all right, he's cute, but there's some things, some maturing that we need to go through before I decide to have children with this person. Real talk, man. I mean, like, it's, we're exploited. As black men, we are exploited. Simply because a woman sees us, we're cute, we look like we have the potential, right? The potential. You are basing your whole entire relationship with this man based upon what you believe he has the potential to be. And then when he fails you, because he never had the potential to be what you anticipated him being, when he disappoints you, when he fails you, then all black men are no good, black men ain't this, black men ain't... You gotta be kidding me, man. You have got to be kidding me. If you would have just taken a little bit of time and looked into this man's life and to see where this man came from, his story would have dictated to you how far you should go with him. But we don't do that because we're constantly exploiting people for our own temporary pleasures. I want to be with this guy. I want to marry him. I want to be in a relationship with him. I want him to be the father of my kids. But you never stop to say, before I do all of these things, before I make all of these commitments with this guy, let me take a peek into where he comes from. Let me take a look at his life. Let me take a look at his mother, his children, his relationship with his parents. Then you find out that he grew up in a foster home. You find out that, his parents were murdered when he was a kid. You find out that he only grew up with his mom. You find out that he only did this, he only did that, That will make you, when you take a look into you take a peek at his reality, right? You got to be able to see beyond the mannequin, right? What you see is a mannequin. And a mannequin is only going to be what you want him to be. So we are exploited as men. Like, woman sees us, if I dress him like this, he can be what I want him to be. If I do this with him, then he can be what I want him to be. But you never really see him for who he really is. And that is that he never had the potential to be what you wanted him to be from the beginning. He never had it. So it's important for us, not to, to get away from, this whole exploitation, man. Stop exploiting one another. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll stop here. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama tasliman kathira wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Here again, our fundraiser that is tomorrow. Our future is now. That is our fundraiser tomorrow. That is from 5 to 9 p.m. 315 Green Tree Road, Sewell, New Jersey. We are collecting funds for another facility, inshallah ta'ala. If you have it in your schedule tomorrow to come out and benefit, inshallah, please come and do so. Even if you don't have any money and you want to come and you want to spend time with, with the community, it's all good. It's all good. All right. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.